Hello, everyone, and many thanks for joining today's live stream community chatter, bigger traditional community chatter as we call it. Happy Sunday to all of you, of course. And before I start, let me just give you notice that today I will do a live stream in old ways when I'm sharing new segment first, and then I'm joining chatter itself. Last couple of Sunday, community chats were quite disastrous. Let's be real about it. And so I will go back to old ways so that at least I will give you a new segment. And then if there is an interest to continue live stream, okay. If not, then that's it, right? Before I start, dear friends, let me highlight that just now, one of the members of our community, Julie, sent a donation through PayPal. Thank you very much, Julie, for $8 donation. And a comment from Julie is sending this because the power is still on. And as if I understand correctly, this comment related to some weather issues. So there might be some, difficult weather in your area where power outages might occur due to this. Thank you very much, Julie. My apologies if I misunderstood your comment. Thank you very much for your support and $8 donation, and hopefully power gonna stay on, and there are gonna be no issues with that. And well, that's being said, dear friends, usually these Sunday chats, I will say it for potential new members that may be watching this live stream Sunday community chat first time. Usually this is mainly about exchange of opinions between community members in real time, right? So after I will share new segment, I will join community, I will react on questions that are directed to me. And if you have a question or comment that you want to be highlighted or addressed during the live stream, please use capital letters, or capital Q will do, basically. That makes it easier to spot the comment. And usually these Sunday community chats were also, for the last couple of months at least, sort of a fundraising streams to raise about $200 for next week, so that I will have something to work with, and the work will be itself less stressful. But as I said, last couple of streams were quite disastrous on Sundays, so therefore I don't really have much hope on that. It's gonna still be community chat anyways, right? But if anyone wants to donate, support my work, support this project, of course you can see support platforms in under this video in description box, and there is a link to my Patreon page. Subscription will be big support, of course. Also link to Boosty platform that can be used there for donations, and also I have a page there, a lot of videos, extra content, and you can subscribe to that page. And during the live stream, of course, you can use a super chat feature on Rumble. I'm streaming on both my channels on live on YouTube and Rumble, and you can use that super chat feature on Rumble, and become a premium subscriber on Rumble if you want to, or gift a premium subscription to others. This is all helps this project, by the way, to exist, right, to survive. Okay, I guess this is enough for intro, and I will go now through some news first, and after new segment I will join community chatter. And let's start then without any further delay. And once again, dear friends, thank you all for your attention, for joining this stream. And first news I want to share is about work of Russian air defense systems past night. RIA Novosti, based on latest update of Russian Defense Ministry, shared information with the public that 52 drones that was launched by Kyiv regime with the assistance of NATO was intercepted by air defenses past night. 18 drones were intercepted of the Bryansk region, 15 in Krasnodar region, 9 in Rostov region, 4 in Oryol, 3 each in Belgorod and Astrakhan regions. In response to attacks by Ukrainian armed forces, report says Russian troops are striking exclusively at the military facilities and their Ukrainian military industrial complex enterprises with high precision air, sea, and land-based weapons, as well as drones. And of course, energy infrastructure of the Kiev regime is targeted too, because obviously energy plays crucial role to operate for Kiev regime and its NATO backers to operate whatever is left from military industrial complex to move around troops. It plays crucial role in logistics. Of course, Russian militaries are targeting energy infrastructure also. And on this matter, by the way, on Russian retaliatory strikes, day before yesterday, not last night, but night before, Russian militaries conducted quite a large-scale, long-range strikes on military and logistical infrastructure of their hostile side, on energy infrastructure too. And there are reports from side of Kiev regime that as a result of Russian strikes, Kiev's SHP 5 and their SHP 6 power plants were damaged. And there also Kievskaya 750 substation was hit. This is according to Stanislav Ignatiev, head of the Ukrainian Renewable Energy Association's council, and reports are that this substation connects the Rovno nuclear power plant that is located in western Ukraine to Kiev itself and supplies Kiev with electricity. Earlier, if you remember, dear friends, I did said that there is a high level of possibility that Russian militaries will take out substations that are connecting a grid to nuclear power plants, and that's exactly what happened. But let's make no mistake, by the way, there is two different lines, right, that are connected with nuclear power plants. There is one line that supplies power plant itself for essential infrastructure, right? That is a cooling system and everything else. Those lines were never targeted by Russian forces that are supplying nuclear power plants and playing crucial role in the safety of the power plant itself. But there is other lines that connects nuclear power plant generated electricity, let's say, on those power plants to grid. And that's the substations, including this Kievskaya 750, that was neutralized. And as a result, according to reports that I see, there is a massive power outages or blackouts, basically, in many areas controlled by Kiev regime, including capital of this former Soviet Republic, Kiev. And more and more high-ranking officials on the Kiev-controlled territory and public figures are basically repeating their calls for locals to evacuate if they have such an opportunity, because situation is difficult. Obviously, especially in the cities, by the way, it is difficult to maintain any level of basically quality of life when there is no electricity, there is no heating, right? There is collapse of logistics and so on. And therefore, even before representatives of Kiev regime began calling for civilians to evacuate, way before that, like months before that, I myself was saying that it will be a very wise decision on part of residents of Kiev and other cities that still are controlled by this terrorist regime of Zelensky, backed by the West, to evacuate and to move, if they have opportunity to move in a rural area, if they have dachas or relatives that can take them, or to leave for Europe. And they have every right to demand from European states to be provided with everything. Safety, shelter, everything. Food, right? Because yet again, without direct negative involvement of the Western ruling class in the fate of Ukraine, there would be no this crisis in existence. We all understand this, so responsibility definitely lays on the Western ruling class and all the countries that they control. And I can understand that societies in Europe may not be happy with their incoming waves of the refugees from Ukraine, but they should, Did they do anything to stop their political leaders from destabilizing Ukraine, from conducting coup d'etat, for example, in 2014? Did the societies in Europe try in serious ways to influence their governments not to launch this proxy war against Russia? No, they didn't, right? And absence of action does not gives them immunity from the consequences, because after all, it's their countries and their governments are operating under their name. And people in the West have to understand this, right? That their own governments are operating not as some private citizens, but as representatives of these societies and the countries. So it is what it is. European states definitely have to provide Ukrainian refugees with everything necessary. They have to. And the reports are, by the way, that allegedly 600,000 people already left, for example, Kiev. I find it difficult to believe these reports because there is no confirmations of increased waves of Ukrainian refugees that are leaving for Poland or Germany or other countries. But maybe in upcoming days, we will actually receive a confirmation of these reports, right? Anyways, energy collapse on the Kiev control territory is only escalating, and things not gonna get any better. Quite sure about it anytime soon. Also, when it comes to energy war that is going on right now, you are informed, dear friends, that Kiev regime, with assistance of its NATO backers, targeted quite a number of commercial vessels that are bound to Russia in the Black Sea, in the Mediterranean, elsewhere. We all remember that one tanker was sinking, maybe sunk already, off coast of Senegal, Africa, by the way, right? And that vessel was also bound, linked to Russia and was damaged as a result of drone strikes. So also there is hijackings, right? Constant hijackings of the vessels, commercial vessels that are linked to Russia on the high seas. US is engaged in this hijacking. US militaries, US government, British government and militaries, French government militaries. There was also attempts to harass commercial vessels linked to Russia by other European countries. Finland, Sweden, Norway, they all are involved, Denmark, right? And we have this report, by the way, that I think is interesting, that something had happened with yet another Russian, this time around. This is actually a Russian vessel, not linked to Russia, but vessel that is under the Russian flag in the Mediterranean. Tanker Progress, which is under the Russian flag, crew lost control over the tanker off coast of Algeria, and sent distressed signal. According to originally this report is coming from Bloomberg, and Bloomberg also reporting that there is a 730,000 barrels of oil, Urals. Urals is a Russian oil, right? Brand. And there is a 730,000 barrels of oil on board of this tanker, which did not yet sunk, but speed has dropped on the tanker by 1 knots. It's almost not moving now, and on a draft at the sea. And yet again, reports are that crew is struggling to control the vessel. No reports for now that the vessel was attacked by drones, but earlier there was instances when vessels, Russian vessels and vessels that were linked to Russia, was targeted by NATO member states and their proxy regime in Kiev. Few vessels, I remember at least one instance when vessel actually sunk, by the way, right? Cargo vessel. And therefore, it is highly likely that this tanker was also potentially targeted by NATO drones or the drones of NATO proxy regime, which is same, by the way, right? So yes, that's the situation. If vessel sinks, if this tanker sinks, by the way, well, that's going to cause a quite ecological disaster, isn't it? 730,000 barrels of oil is it's a little more than gallon, right? So something to keep in mind, and it's a disaster in the making, isn't it? These constant attacks on Russian commercial vessels, including tankers or their vessels that are linked to Russia. I mean, at some point, there's going to be some disaster, ecological disaster included. And it is worth noticing that none of their Western so-called green parties or green organizations or eco-activists, none of them dare to say single critical word about this terrorist activity of the Kyiv regime and its NATO backers, right? That are actually generating, creating circumstances in which there is highly likely that some ecological disaster going to happen. And yet again, it's a disaster in the making. It's a matter of time, man, at this point, right? And something will go big time wrong, for sure. And as I have said many times before, as many of you also suggested, and there are other commentators on the internet, Russia is deploying its naval assets to protect at least some of their commercial vessels that are linked to Russia. And there were reports, by the way, that was originated in UK, for example, that British militaries were monitoring movement of Russian Boyti corvette that was escorting tanker General Skobelev while they were passing through English Channel or La Manche, by the way. And these kind of instances when Russian battleships, Russian military vessels, corvettes, cruisers, whatever, are escorting their commercial vessels will only increase because what else can we do, really, right, to protect their maritime routes? Question is, though, will Russia be able to protect all of their maritime routes, all of the commercial vessels? This is a big question because there is thousands of commercial vessels that are coming in and out of Russian ports. Some are actually Russian vessels, some are foreign vessels, and there is only a certain number of blue water military vessels that Russia actually has that can escort these commercial vessels at high sea, right? So I'm afraid there are instances when commercial vessels that are sailing alone without Russian military protection still will be targeted and hijacked, either by U.S. militaries or British militaries or French militaries. French militaries just a few days ago hijacked another commercial vessel linked to Russia. I reported about it. And yeah, situation only going to escalate. That's all I want to say. Because yet again, unfortunately, Russia just don't has thousands of frigates or the corvettes, right, that can escort all the commercial vessels, right? Anyways, let's continue with some other news. And TASS News Agency is reporting that Russian armed forces liberated Starice settlement in Kharkov region, and also, by the way, Russian Defense Ministry confirmed the liberation of Semyonovka settlement, also in the Kharkov region. If you remember, during my previous live stream, that was on Friday, I reported about progress of the Russian armed forces in Kharkov region on the northern-western side of Volchansk, right? And this is Starica settlement that is liberated by Russian forces. And let me show you another one. And this is Semyonovka settlement, by the way, that is also liberated by Russian forces now. So Russian troops continue to further advance in Kharkov region while creating this buffer zone, right? Also, let me share with you this report that, well, according to TASS News Agency, TASS News Agency basically learned about at least several topics that was discussed during the 2 days negotiations on Saturday in Abu Dhabi between Russian, US, and Kyiv regime's delegations. So buffer zones and various control mechanisms are among the topics discussed at the meeting of the Trilateral Working Group of Russia, United States, and the Kyiv regime on the security issues in Abu Dhabi. Task source said, and also more and more reports are coming in that one of the major topics of discussion was not just a territorial issue, but also temporary energy ceasefire. And reports are that the European Union is basically demanded from Kyiv regime to link its positions to that energy ceasefire. They are desperate, by the way, right? Globalists or NATO backers of Kyiv regime cannot really help them much, right? In this case, and they are pushing this narrative of temporary solutions again. I don't know. I don't know what Moscow will do. Will Moscow agree on energy ceasefire or not? Probably not, because it will be hard to sell to Russian public if Moscow, for whatever reason, agrees on energy ceasefire. By the way, even if Russian leadership will speculate with the matters that, you know what, for humanitarian purposes, we decided to hold the fire on energy infrastructure, that would not work actually, because well, then why you start targeting energy infrastructure to begin with, right? Because you know from the get-go, isn't it, that final outcome will be energy collapse if you continue these strikes. So why you have started that? So this it's going to be very difficult for Moscow to sell to Russian public agreement on energy ceasefire, and if for whatever reason Moscow will agree, that will be clearly indicator that maybe Russian leadership is actually considering to agree on some sort of a Minsk-free. And I can see some indicators that maybe this is exactly the direction that Moscow is headed now. Means some sort of a Minsk-free, by the way. We can call it whatever we want, but it would be temporary solution that Russian leadership says many times they would not ever accept. And if anyone actually hopes for temporary solutions, temporary energy ceasefire or ceasefire on the ground is NATO and NATO proxy regime in Kiev, because they are on the edge of total collapse, right? And this Minsk-free, if it will be done, will definitely help them to breathe freely, to rearm, reorganize their proxy regime in Kiev, and whenever they are ready, launch second round, start escalation again, right? So I'm not saying that Moscow is going to agree 100% on a Minsk-free, but it does seems like there is such a probability, right? So none of us should be surprised if after next round of these trilateral talks that's supposed to take place on February 1st, right? Yes, on February 1st, according to Axios, none of us should be surprised that after those talks in early February, we will actually end up in some sort of a Minsk-free. Let's wait and see, right? And also, Axios reported that Putin-Zelensky meeting is in works and might happen shortly. If true, by the way, this is also an indicator that some sort of a Minsk-free is being prepared, right? So Russian President Vladimir Putin may soon meet Vladimir Zelensky, Axios web portal said, citing source in the US administration. And let me give you a quote from this article. We are very close to a meeting between Putin and Zelensky. A US official said, cited by their news portal, additional trilateral negotiations should be organized before that. The source noted, we think those meetings need to happen before a meeting between the leaders. We don't think we are far away from that. If we continue down the current path, we will get to that place, he stressed. So maybe true, I don't know. Maybe we are about to see not just Minsk-free, but actual meeting between Putin and Zelensky. Anything is possible, by the way, at this point. Nothing should surprise us, of course. And even though if they're gonna be Minsk free, by the way, if Kremlin agrees on some temporary measures, even though very same Russian high-ranking officials stated many times before that they're gonna be no temporary solutions, but if for whatever reason they agree on a Minsk free, this temporary truce and stuff like that, and even it's gonna be hard for Kremlin to sell this to public. Well, they will manage to do it. It's gonna be hard, but they will still manage to do it. But because propaganda, by the way, is propaganda, right? And propaganda is brainwashing people in the West, and propaganda is brainwashing people in Russia too, right? Propaganda that ruling elites are pushing, and therefore they will use all the propaganda means they have. I mean, Kremlin, to brainwash people and put in their mindset idea that, well, this Minsk 3 is now somehow different than Minsk 1 and Minsk 2. They will manage to do so, by the way. They did sell Minsk 1 and Minsk 2 at the time, isn't it? And if I remember correctly, those ideas, I mean, very many people in Russia was very critical, right? Very skeptical about those plans, and they were correct. But still, majority accept it because propaganda is a devastating weapon, right? That brainwashes people quite easily, right? And propaganda works everywhere, in the West, in the East, in South, in the North, just everywhere, right? So yeah, I would not be surprised at all if if Moscow agrees on some sort of a Minsk free, propaganda will brainwash people, significant number of people at least here in Russia, so much so that if you go critical of Minsk free, then you're gonna get attacked, and you're gonna call traitor or something, as it happens in the West, by the way. If you say something adequate in the West, you're gonna be called a Russian asset straight away and a traitor and that kind of stuff, right? So something similar might happen here in Russia too. Anyways, we will find out, by the way. I have said many times before that, in my personal opinion, this proxy war that West is waging against Russia will actually end when Russian troops will reach borders of the Western Ukraine. And this will happen. And even if Minsk 3 being agreed, right, that will be pause. That will be just temporary pause. At some point, once the Western ruling class will rearm and reorganize their proxies in Kiev, they will launch a next round of hostilities, right? And this will continue until Russian troops will reach Western Ukraine. And they will one day, right? If Russian troops and Russian security services were not forced to fight this fight with both hands being tied behind their backs, our troops already would be on a border with the Western Ukraine. But yeah, what happened, right? There is no way now to change anything in this regard. But yes, I'm 100% convinced that this proxy war will end only when Russian troops reach borders of the Western Ukraine. There might be some pauses in between Minsk 3, maybe Minsk 4, Minsk freaking 5 or something like that. But eventually, proxy war itself, war between West and Russia, will only end when Russian troops reach borders of the Western Ukraine and force, one way or another, but force Western ruling class, globalists, and their freaking allies to capitulate. And this will happen. This will happen. It's only a matter of time. Meanwhile, RT is reporting that Poland, well, relationships between Poland and Germany is escalating, as I predicted, by the way, and I'm quite sure in 10, 15 years' time, both countries are going to end up in an actual war, right? Inevitable, absolutely inevitable, by the way. Well, Poland, as you know, is demanding from Germany over 1.3 trillion euros of compensation for damages during the World War II. And obviously, many people in Germany are not happy about it. Many people in Germany are not happy with their massive militarization programs in Poland, right? And also they are not happy with the attitude of Poland towards Germany, right? Including this demand of tremendous compensations. Germany paid already to Poland with land, right? Not just with land, with money too, but with land also. And there may be some people forget, but a significant portion of the Germany was given to Poland after World War II by Stalin, right? Significant portion of Germany was given to Poland as a compensation for harm that was done to Poland, and also as a form of compensation for eastern territories of Poland that was taken by Stalin and given to Soviet Ukraine. And this topic will only gain relevance in Germany. And for example, already, by the way, already calls are in Germany to demand from Poland tremendous compensations for Polish participation in a Nord Stream terrorist attack. So Poland should compensate Germany for complicity in 2022 explosions that put the Nord Stream gas pipelines out of operation. Right-wing German politician has claimed the amount cited by the K. Gottschalk, an MP from the opposition Alternative for Germany party, and this party might become a ruling party soon, corresponds to 1.3 trillion in compensation for World War II that Warsaw previously demanded from Berlin. So this German MP is saying that, well, Poland is demanding from us 1.3 trillion euros, isn't it? So let's demand from Poland also 1.3 trillion for their complicity in Nord Stream terrorist attacks. This German MP wrote on X on Wednesday that 1.3 trillion euros should suffice, whatever this word means, by the way, as reparations for complicity in the Nord Stream sabotage. Berlin authorities have attributed the act of sabotage that severely damaged their conduits which carried Russian gas to Germany under the Baltic Sea to a small group of Ukrainian nationals. Poland has rejected a German extradition request for a key suspect in their case. So, yes, one might say, well, this German MP is just nobody. No one cares what he has to say. But no, man, it's not like that. There are very many people in Germany, I'm quite sure about it, that are not happy. Definitely not happy with Poland. And this Alternative for Germany party may actually become a ruling party in Germany. So we should pay attention what their MPs from AFT are saying, by the way. And also, let's not forget that formally in response to non-existent Russian aggression, but in reality, I'm quite sure, mostly because of the militarization of Poland, Germany is planning to invest hundreds of billions of euros into its military-industrial complex to rebuild it and also to rebuild the Bundeswehr, military capabilities of Germany. And I have no doubts, by the way, that Berlin is preparing for a war with Poland, not with any less seriousness than with the war with Russia. Although, by the way, I find it difficult to believe that German leadership will go so crazy that they will actually get involved in open direct war with Russia. It's going to be suicidal for Germany. So they will talk tough, but when it comes to ground operations, probably they will stay out of it, right? They will support idea of Poland being sacrificed. They will support ideas of Baltic Chihuahuas being sacrificed, Finland being sacrificed. But to get involved directly, well, German elites will probably pause on that. Although we will see. Give it 10, 15 years, and if there is no war between Poland and Germany, by the way, I will apologize to whole of our community for being this wrong, but I would not have to, because war between Germany and Poland is absolutely inevitable. Absolutely, by the way. Absolutely. RT is also reporting that, well, there is tensions, by the way, not just between Germany and Poland, but among other NATO member states too. And the US president just recently went to make statements in regards to its NATO allies that upset very many people in NATO, including in UK. So much so that even this coward creature, Stammer, Prime Minister of UK, went to demand apologies from US president for downgrading, and by doing so, basically insulting memories of the 457 British military personnel that died in Afghanistan, for example, while fighting shoulder to shoulder with their American allies. And I guess message reached White House, and there was a big deal in UK, still is, by the way, right? Very many people in UK, rightfully, I will say, was appalled by Trump's statements. This is not the way allies should treat each other, for sure, right? I don't care, obviously, about relationships between US and the UK, but to be objective, I mean, UK has a point, right? You don't treat your allies this way, and you don't insult memory of their fallen soldiers of your ally. It's just not the way civilized people to operate, right? So UK had every reason to be upset, for sure. And let me give you a short video of this Stammer's statement when he basically demanded apology. So I believe I have a video of that. Yeah, that's the video, by the way. No, not this. No. No. What the heck is going on, man? Do I have a video? Yeah, I have. Sorry for this technical stuff.
Paying tribute to the 457 of our armed services who lost their lives in Afghanistan. I will never forget their courage, their bravery, and the sacrifice that they made for their country. There are many also who were injured, some with life-changing injuries. And so I consider President Trump's remarks to be insulting and frankly appalling. And I'm not surprised they've caused such hurt to the loved ones of those who were killed or injured, and in fact, across the country. If I had misspoken in that way or said those words, I would certainly apologise. We have a very close relationship with the US, and that is important for our security, for our defence and our intelligence, and it's very important we maintain that relationship. But it is because of that relationship that we fought alongside the Americans for our values in Afghanistan. And it was in that context that people lost their lives or suffered terrible injuries, fighting for freedom, fighting with our allies for what we believe in.
Нормально. Да нормально все, это... Нет, там видео идет. Сейчас. У меня наушников нет просто, но там должно быть слышно в лайве. So this is it, dear friends, about this video. And even though the rest of the world sees occupation of Afghanistan by US and its allies as a crime against humanity, and definitely US and British and all the other their allies committed numerous crimes while occupying Afghanistan, we all are very informed about it. And that's how the rest of the world remembers this occupation, right? First and foremost, for all the crimes that these occupying forces committed. But from American and British standpoint, at least from the standpoint of their leadership, they were allies, right? They went in together, and they were doing whatever they were doing together. And British militaries, British political leadership, even British public, by the way, has every right to be upset on the US president for downgrading the sacrifice of the British militaries, right? So both, medals always have two sides, right? And one can understand why UK went this serious about this topic. Although, yet again, the rest of the world, of course, sees this occupation, 20-year occupation of Afghanistan by US and its allies as a crime, because it was crime, right? They went in and killed God knows how many civilians, by the way. Who counted? Just dozens of times they bombed their weddings and their burying ceremonies and stuff, right? With the drones and stuff. So it's horrendous what they did there, right? But nevertheless, UK had every reason to be upset with Washington, with Donald Trump, and they demonstrated this. As much as they could, and their message was heard. Message was heard, by the way, in US, right? Because Donald Trump did not really apologize. But he spoke about the matter, right? And let me give you his statement on that. The great and very brave soldiers of the United Kingdom will always be with the United States of America. In Afghanistan, 157 died, many were badly injured, and they were among the greatest of all warriors. It's a bond too strong to ever be broken. The UK military, with a tremendous heart and soul, is second to none, except for the US. He's insulting even here, by the way, in this comment, British militaries. We love you all, and always will, President Donald J. Trump. This is not an apology. This is actually even more insulting, this response, I will say, right? But yet again, man, who says that being enemy of US is dangerous, being friend of US fatal? Someone, it was who was that? Brzezinski, or I can't remember now, man. Right, but someone did say that, and it's a quite a correct Kissinger, yes. Who really is commenting right now that it was Kissinger? Yes, I could not remember. So that's how it is, man. Actually, right. So no one should be surprised that one day US will turn their back on you if you were thinking that you are greatest allies of US, and they will never treat you any other way. They will, man. They have done it many times before. American ruling class, by the way, that is, of course, and they will do it again, for sure. Let's continue with some other news. And of course, Trump being Trump, he could not stand without attacking its allies, or US allies, formal at least allies. And he went big time after Canada. And let me give you some of his posts, by the way. The last thing the world needs is to have China taking over Canada. It's not going to happen, or even come close to happening. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. And he also, by the way, wrote this on his True Social. If Governor Cornyn, and he is trying to insult, obviously, Canadians, their leadership, calling governor to their prime ministers, and he was calling Canada to become a state, isn't it? One of the states of US. So that's what Trump is writing. If Governor Cornyn thinks he is going to make Canada a drop-off porter for China to send goods and products into the United States, he is sorely mistaken. China will eat Canada alive, completely devour it, including their destruction of their businesses, social fabric, and their general way of life. if Canada makes a deal with China, it will immediately be hit with 100% tariffs against all Canadian goods and products coming into USA. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. And of course, Trump responded with this post on recent visit of Corney to China and statements about potential further acceleration of the cooperation between China and Canada, right? And of course, Trump used this matter to attack Canada. I predicted that this would happen for sure. I also said that US will never allow Canada to actually build strategical partnership with China. Not happening, by the way. US will occupy Canada before that happens. US will send its troops to Canada, but they will not allow Ottawa to build a strategical partnership with anybody, not just with China or Russia, by the way, even with Europeans. If Europeans will become strategical partners of Canada, if Europeans will try to use Canada, right, as a trampoline to send their goods into US, even in that case, US will take over Canada forcefully if necessary. US ruling class, right? Yes, Canada did find itself in a very tricky situation now, isn't it? They are relying on US big time. US is their major market, basically, understandably so. Geography speaks for itself. And well, statehood of Canada is under question, for sure. We have many members of in our community from Canada. Hopefully they will share their take, what they think about future relationships with the US, but I think hostility will only increase. And one way or another, but Washington will definitely try to establish complete control over the Canada, political processes, foreign policy of Canada, right, as much as possible. If they will do it without intervention, military intervention, okay, if they fail to do that through soft power, through blackmail and stuff, then they will send their militaries. They would not hesitate, by the way, quite sure about it, right? And already high-ranking officials in US, by the way, are making quite strange statements, right? In regards to Canada, for example, Treasury Secretary of US, Bessent, openly flirted with their idea of breaking Alberta away from Canada and joining the US. And Alberta is an oil-rich, resource-rich province of Canada, by the way, right? These kind of statements on this level is not happening randomly, right? This is messages, right? This is a part of a blackmail campaign that US is engaged now to basically force Canada to submission. And they might succeed in that, right? One way or another, but due to difference in weight between US and Canada, most likely Washington will succeed in this terror campaign and will, one way or another, but will establish control over its neighbors. Canada now, something might happen with Mexico too, right? And yeah. Also, what else have I bookmarked for today's live stream, by the way? New York Times, meanwhile, reports that despite Trump's words, China and Russia are not threatening Greenland. Really, New York Times? Oh, thank you for telling us. We didn't know it. What would we do, by the way, without New York Times telling us that, well, despite all the rhetorics on the part of Trump or the Western ruling class, things are not necessarily exactly as they say, because this is true, and we all know this, right? We all know this. Russia and China never threatened Greenland with anything, literally, right? Never. But that's what happens, by the way. That's what happens when Western societies, majority, let's say vast majority of societies in the West are complacent, right? Or too passive when it comes to these crazy policies that are implemented by their own governments. European elites, American elites went far away, by the way, in demonizing Russia and China, right? Number of other countries, true, but in this particular case, we are talking about Russia and China. So this demonization campaign is going on for decades, right? Especially in terms of Russia. And leader societies, majorities in the West, in Western countries, challenge their own governments on these false narratives, on this propaganda? Never, isn't it? They never challenge their own governments. They happily digest this crap that Russia somehow is their enemy, and Russians somehow are dreaming about attacking everybody, right? And they're occupying Europe, America, Greenland, Mainlander, everything, whole planet, and then also solar system, and then entire Milky Way galaxy. And why stop there? We want to occupy also these neighboring dwarf galaxies, right? And then we also want to occupy freaking Andromeda, man. That will hit us in, I don't know, man, couple of billion years from now. Why Western societies didn't challenge their crazy elites, man, when they were pushing these false narratives? Why they were happy to accept this narrative and get indoctrinated in Russia hate, China hate, and all that stuff? Why? Just because of this complicity of the Western societies, now we are in a situation when literally anything, Western elites are justifying literally anything, by the way, anything with non-existent threat from Russia and China. And because public is so indoctrinated in this hate of Russia and China, they are saying nothing, right? All you have to do, by the way, whatever crazy idea you have, either in US or in Europe or in any Western country, you can justify this idea mentioning Russia and China. Anything, by the way, right? Trump might say tomorrow that they're going to send militaries in Minneapolis and exterminate everybody there. Because Minneapolis, and he might continue that this has to be done because Minneapolis was infiltrated by Chinese and Russian assets for decades, and this city now and all the occupants of the city are Russian spies, Chinese spies, Iranian spies, right? They all are spies now. And because they are opposing, and do you not, you want facts, by the way, they are opposing Washington, right? That clearly means that they are working for Russia and China. How otherwise? Why would they oppose anything that this great emperor Trump says? And you know what? True propaganda means majority Americans probably will eat that crap too and believe in that shit. I have no doubts, man. That's how this works, right? So society in the West should blame themselves, right, for being in a situation in which they are right now. And some people in the West, I can understand why some people in the West would be extremely depressed by what's going on, and maybe they feel to be lost in some ways, right, in their own countries. Maybe they feel now that they have no voice because if they oppose, well, they might gonna call names, all sorts of names, right? They're gonna call traitors and stuff, right? Russian assets, Chinese assets. Not just in US, in Europe too, brother. Moment you oppose major narratives of the globalists, neocons, Zionists, oh, you're gonna call the names, and you are lucky if your life is not being destroyed completely, if your business have not been destroyed, and if you are working on some company, if you were not fired, you know. And this would not be possible if Western societies challenge their own elites when they start pushing these crazy narratives that, well, Russians are coming. Really, I mean, for decades, people being told Russians are coming. Why we did not arrive, man? You are not that far, really. Why we did not arrive? Can you tell me? Maybe we never planned to attack in the first place. So yeah, New York Times now telling us that, well, despite Trump's statements, yeah, China and Russia are not really threatening Greenland. Thank you very much, New York Times. We didn't know this. Oh, thank you. So kind of you, huh? Anyways, by the way, let's continue. Let's continue. And Greenland, according to a local minister of mineral resources, Niger Nathanelson, Greenland will reject any Trump-rooted deal if it includes granting Americans access to their island's resources. Okay, by the way, I mean, it seems like Greenlandian elites and their Danish elites, they have not been told about anything that happened in terms of discussion between Rutte and Trump, and they are not happy about it. They are not happy about it, and probably they will continue to oppose to American plans, right? Okay, let's see how far the US will go in this regards. And as I said many times before, by the way, when it comes to Greenland, I don't think American ruling class is interested in Greenland's mineral resources. So that could be like secondary element, right? Secondary element, but not the major element. Major reason why US wants to US ruling class, by the way, let's say. Sometimes, some members of our community are getting confused when I say US wants to do it. I always talk about elites, right? Ruling class. I'm not talking about ordinary Americans. And I've been criticized, why you say US want to do that. It's easy, man. I'm talking about leadership, isn't it? I'm just making sentence shorter while saying US wants to do this and that. Right? It's obvious that it's not an ordinary Joe from, I don't know, Texas, man, that is dreaming about taking control over their Greenland, isn't it? So anyways, so US ruling class, first and foremost, wants to establish control over the Greenland because that's their easiest way to start expansion in Arctics, right? Or at least that's how they thought, that it will be easier, right, to start from Greenland, like force Europe to submission because Greenland is linked to Denmark. Denmark is a EU, NATO member state, right? And then from there to go further. Canada, obviously, is a neighbor, and the US clearly is escalating with Canada. Iceland, by the way. Trump recently, during his speech in Davos, if you notice, dear friends, mentioned Iceland several times, and people start joking around this matter, saying that, well, Trump misspelled or mismatched Greenland and Iceland. And you know what? No, man, this is not what happened. What happened, in my personal opinion, is that during the briefings, when they discuss this expansion, US expansion into Arctics, I think Iceland come up as a topic, right? And during his speech, time to time, Trump was losing focus on a teleprompter, and he said Iceland because he heard Iceland during possibly, right, during those talks with his aides or with whomever he's discussing these matters, right? And that's why he said Iceland, by the way. He definitely meant Greenland, but Iceland come to his mind because of the conversation on the subject. And Icelanders should be careful, man, right? This is not random stuff. And then there was some crazy justifications that, well, because Greenland is a ice cube kind of writer. Trump misspelled or like misunderstood or something, like he said Iceland instead of Greenland. No, man, he said Iceland because he heard Iceland most likely during the meetings on the topic of expansion into Arctics, right? And he was talking about Greenland, and humans do sometimes this stuff, right? You want to say one thing, but you have heard something else, and that something else just comes up like automatically, right? We all have experienced something like that, right? When you are talking about some subject and some other stuff that directly or indirectly related to that comes up automatically. Something like that had happened with Trump, quite sure. And yes, Greenland is the first step. Then Canada obviously has to be dealt with from standpoint of American ruling class, as I understand. Then gonna be Iceland, by the way. Then gonna be Iceland, and then Norway Yeah, Norway gonna be there too. I don't think if US can go ahead even with the occupation of Iceland, they can actually do that kind of stuff uh, while promising security and the whatever. Uh, Norway is a little bit different. Norway is extremely rich, by the way, with everything, right? Resources, just a sovereign wealth fund of Norway is like trillion plus, right? It's a very rich, wealthy country, by the way, and it's Arctic nation. It's Arctic nation, by the way. You can see here that's Norway, right? So it's an Arctic nation, and to suppress Oslo, U.S. will do something, man, to Norway also, right? Because they don't need competitors in among their allies in Arctic, right? U.S. cannot do much with Russia. Russia is a major player in Arctic, obviously, and U.S. wants to be second. U.S. to be main partner of Russia in Arctic. And Arctic is not just resources, by the way. First and foremost, Arctic is a major trade route. Give it another 15, 20 years, by the way, and Northern Sea Route is going to be number one sea routes in the world, right? And who controls maritime routes controls world economy, controls everything. That's all this stuff is all about, control, right? And US wants to maintain control. Anyways, let's continue with some other topics. And I already mentioned Minneapolis, by the way. Another U.S. citizen, civilian, was killed by ICE agents in a city. I saw videos, by the way. Like 5, 6 guys were beating up one guy. They sprayed this guy with a paper spray first. Then someone saw a gun, allegedly, although the gun was not found on their killed person, and they just executed this 37-year-old Alex Jeffrey Pretty on the spot. And another massive wave of demonstrations has begun due to this tragic situation. Just recently, ICE agents kill a young woman, right? Also a point blank range, by the way. Now this situation, and well, it's a tragedy, obviously. It's tragedy, obviously, but tragedy that was pre-planned. I'm quite sure about it, pre-planned by American ruling class. And I will explain what I mean, by the way. None of these ICE agents were ordered to kill civilians, quite sure. But when you put trigger-happy elements into area where there is a high probability of confrontation, you know what you want to achieve, right? You want shots to be fired, you want escalation to happen. And escalation is happening, right? I'm quite sure there will be other cities too, and already in past several days, by the way, there was massive demonstrations in a number of US cities. Despite cold weather, tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of people march in protest of the federal actions of the federal government. And I think soon we're gonna see similar escalation that we see in Minneapolis, in some other cities too. And then at some point, Washington will say, you know what, situation is going out of control. Foreign powers are exploiting this situation to divide the public. They will blame everything on foreign powers. I don't know, maybe Russia, maybe China, maybe Iran, maybe everybody, right? I don't know. But point is that they will escalate the situation, American ruling class, right? And at some point, they will declare martial law and postpone midterm elections. And this martial law might stand, by the way. They might call it a martial law. They might come up with some other name, but task reasoning behind of this emergency will be to postpone elections, midterm elections, and then potentially even 2028 elections. Because everyone understands, the ruling class in America understands, by the way, that they launch operations that cannot risk destruction, right? They launch on a global scale operations in the Middle East, by the way, in the Arctics, elsewhere in Western Hemisphere, that cannot be distracted. And to make sure there's going to be no distraction in terms of implementing these policies, they will not allow midterm elections to take place at all. Either they have to cancel or postpone, let's say, midterm elections, or they have to fabricate the results, because in no universe, by the way, Republicans gonna maintain House, Congress. By the way, they're gonna lose their House. They're gonna lose, most likely, they will lose their Senate too, right? And it's a distraction, and they're gonna lose the 2028 elections, by the way. And this is going to be such a level of distraction for these policies, right? That probably they will prefer ruling class. I mean, force that actually makes decisions. They will probably prefer to postpone elections, and they are creating now grounds for that. That's what is going on in Minneapolis, by the way. There is so much noise around the topic of ICE, about topic of deportations, and veterans of our community know perfectly well, by the way, that even before Trump was inaugurated, I have said that topic of this open borders or the migration into US is a policy, intentional policy of a ruling class in America that controls both parties, Democrats and Republicans. They want artificially to increase population, right, in the US as much as possible, at least up to 500 million, to maintain more or less relevance on a geopolitical scale. And they will continue with these policies. And therefore, once Trump will get to office, if he will get to office, that was my take, right, before inauguration, there will be much noise on the topic of migrants, illegal migrants, but in actual terms, in actual numbers, there will be very little done, because they bring in these tens of millions of migrants, not for their consequence deportation. No, man. They want more. They want more, man. And I was saying they might deport a couple of 100,000, maybe million, right? But that will be just done for public consumption, because, what is the million when 30, 40 million gonna stay? Nothing, right? So they are succeeding in their plan of artificially increasing population of the US. And let's keep in mind, dear friends, that Western ruling class, generally speaking, American ruling class included, see people as a economical unit. They don't see people as a human being who has any rights and precious human being as a precious entity, right? No, they see it as a commercial unit. And they have a task to increase artificially population of US up to 500 plus million, and they will do it. And that's why, by the way, despite all this noise, right? All this noise, by the way, that's happening in the US around ICE and around this migration and stuff, only like 300,000 people were deported, illegal migrants, allegedly. Although some reports say that some of them were actually legal. 300,000. So you see, this is all mind control games, by the way, that is taking place in US. This is all social engineering, including what is going on in Minneapolis. All you have to do is just zoom out a little bit, right? Zoom out, take into account all the, or as much possible information, right? And then try to see bigger picture. And it will become clear, man. Society in the US has been played by ruling class that controls both parties, by the way, right? Democrats, Republicans. That's why I always say you don't really have elections in the US, by the way, right? Because no matter who you're gonna elect, eventually, ruling class wins, right? Eventually, ruling class wins. That's why policies, generally speaking, never change, despite who is in White House. There are some distractions, right? Distractions because of their propaganda. When Democrats are in office, they have to operate in a certain way. When Republicans are in office, they have to work in other way, right? Yet again, this is in order to maintain control, right? In order to continue to play the people. But generally speaking, policies are not changing because the ruling class is the same. That pulls the, pulls the strings, right? But now we are in a situation when ruling class in US cannot afford even slight destruction of their policies, and that's why they're not going to allow, in my personal opinion, midterm elections to take place. They have no time for that, and therefore situations like in Minneapolis will happen elsewhere too, and then Washington will declare something. They might call it a martial law, they might call it emergency, blah blah blah, whatever they're going to call it. That will be used to postpone midterms. And then we will see, maybe even 2028 will be postponed, right? Maybe Trump will stand down. J.D. Vance will continue instead, or I don't know. Something gonna happen, man, right? And U.S. public being played there big time, as European publics also. Politico, meanwhile, is reporting that Trump's administration weighs a naval blockade to halt Cuban oil imports. Well, Trump's administration is planning to impose total energy embargo on Cuba, which means they will not allow tankers to go in and out. And they can actually do this. They already amass quite a large naval assets, isn't it, in the Caribbean? And what I was saying, from the beginning of this build-up of U.S. military assets in the Caribbean, I was saying that this is not just about Venezuela, by the way. I was saying that first and foremost, this build-up is about Cuba. And I think I was correct on that. They're going to attack Cuba, by the way, one way or another, but U.S. will attack Cuba. And they will try to establish control over the island. Full control. They might use somewhat similar tactics that they use in Venezuela. If it will work, it will work. If not, they will go ahead with their full-scale invasion. We will see, but Cuba gonna be attacked by US. That's just too obvious, right? It's not just Cuba, though. As I said, American ruling class launched start implementing major policies in number of directions in the Western Hemisphere, in the Arctic, and in Middle East, right? And I don't think they will allow any distraction in this process, right? For time being, at least. That's why there are going to be no midterm elections in the US, I think. But anyways, to continue on the topic of US hostility, Trump stated, Haaretz, Israeli media outlet, is reporting that CENTCOM Chief General Brad Cooper in Israel to meet with the defense officials aimed at the coordination in a winter of a possible strike on Iran. And Trump, as you know, dear friends, while flying from Davos to US, from Europe to US, on board of a plane, stated that there is quite a number of US military assets that have been deployed towards the Middle East, right? And on this, he's correct. There is quite a number of military assets that actually are moving towards Iran, aircraft strike group, fighter jets, aerial tankers, air defense systems. A lot of assets has been moved there. to Middle East, and I think strike on Iran is absolutely inevitable. Although, by the way, some people in the West still think that guys, what's going on? Just a sec. Оказывается, зарядки не было. Все это время, блин, ноутбук работал без зарядки. Sorry, guys, I just noticed that all this time notebook was working without a charger. It's quite surprising that even though notebook is quite old, it did not run out of energy in first 15 minutes. Crazy. So yes, I think, dear friends, even though in the West there is an opinion that U.S. intervention gonna be so great for people of Iran. They're gonna be regime change. They're gonna have democracy and freedom and blah blah blah, all that kind of nonsense. In reality, this is not what's gonna happen. By the way, Western ruling class don't cares about people of Iran. I have spoke about it many times before. What they want is to provoke internal conflict in Iran on a religious, when possible, and ethnic lines. And they want to do the same all over the region. They want to provoke regional war on a sectarian, that is religious, and ethnic lines to shut down navigation into Persian Gulf through Hormuz Strait, right? And so that's their task. And as I said, and they are bringing in forces, by the way, right? Probably their calculus is that they will attack, they will try to decapitate Iranian leadership, Iranian government, right? And probably Western ruling class is hoping that that will create a vacuum, chaos, right? A power vacuum, and then different fractions will start fighting for power, and that will transform this conflict into full-scale civil war. Probably that's the calculus, right? And I think Moscow and Beijing are too passive, in my personal opinion. I don't understand why Russian Navy is not deployed in the Persian Gulf around, right? Why Chinese Navy is not deployed there? Why we are allowing Western ruling class to go ahead with this attack on the Middle East, which is direct attack also on the national security interests of the Russia and China. Why we are allowing this to happen? Why we are not even trying to deter Western ruling class? I don't know. But if not stopped, it's only a matter of time, days, weeks. But it's a matter of time, by the way. And Iran will be attacked again, and we're gonna see destabilization in other regional countries too. 100%. And on this very topic, by the way, right? I spoke about this during the second update, my previous second update on my Patreon and Boosty pages. To destabilize the region, of course, Western ruling class is targeting not just Iran, by the way. They are provoking confrontation between many regional countries. Some members of our community may don't even know that Saudi Arabia and UAE are engaged in a proxy war against each other in Yemen. They are killing each other's assets, right? Saudi Arabia is dominating, but nevertheless, of course, that creates tensions between Abu Dhabi and Riyadh. We all know that there is tremendous tensions on the level of a ruling class between Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Bahrain is, by the way, in very also, let's say, Bahrain is under the risk to face their conflict on on religious lines, right? Or I believe majority in Bahrain are Shiites, while the ruling class is Sunni, right? So you see, Western ruling class is trying to destabilize situation all over the Middle East, and they are involved in every crisis situation that I mentioned. And when it comes to Iraq, Financial Times, by the way, Western media, so-called, is reporting that administration of U.S. President Donald Trump is pressuring leading Iraqi politicians to form a new government without the participation of influential Iranian-backed Shiite individuals seeking to limit Tehran's influence in Baghdad. And by the way, what that means? Clearly, this is yet another attempt on part of US American ruling class, which is a part of Western ruling class, obviously, to basically escalate the situation inside Iraq too, and provoke conflict on sectarian lines. Because let's keep in mind, majority Iraqis are Shiites, and they objectively have sympathies towards Iran, because Iran is a majority Shiite too, right? And only way you're going to have a government that is not sympathizing to Iran is if you limit presence of Shiites in the government. And well, Iraqi people still remember, I guess, how that such a government did look like. That's exactly what Saddam Hussein was doing. His regime was strictly based, or mostly based, on Sunni minority. So if now there will be attempt, if US will push for a majority Sunni government, then of course that will create tensions between Shiites and Sunnis. And Iraq already went through several waves of this tremendous, horrible civil war, right, on the sectarian lines. And that's what US wants to do again. And this information is directly telling us about it, right? One more indicator what plans of the Western ruling class is in regards to the Middle East. To destabilize whole the region as much as possible, shut down navigation in the Persian Gulf through Hormuz Strait, and to harm China as much as they can, right, while cutting Chinese economy from Middle Eastern energy sources, then force China to increase its dependence on Russian energy up to absolutely critical levels. And then at that point, Western ruling class will all they have to do is to create some frictions between Moscow and Beijing, and put some fear in the leadership of China that Moscow might turn their back on China, right? Which will be, which might be enough actually for Beijing to launch a military operation to secure closest energy fields closest to China. And where those closest energy fields are, by the way, it's in Central Asia, former Soviet republics of Central Asia, Kazakhstan, rich with oil, Turkmenistan, rich with gas, and of course, Russia. That's what their ultimate end game of Western ruling class is, to provoke war between China and Russia, and to destroy, by the way, to destroy Global South, to destroy basically only competitors they are facing. And that's why I'm saying, by the way, neither Moscow, neither Beijing can allow destabilization of the Middle East to happen. We have to oppose Western ruling class, man. And why we have no strong naval presence in the region, why we don't have a strong military presence in the region, I have no freaking idea, man. Us, Russia, also China, India has to be very active too, because they don't want this stuff to happen, obviously, right? Because they're going to be harmed too. Because if Western ruling class actually managed to provoke conflict between China and Russia, which will go nuclear, obviously, then, if anybody in India thinks they're going to be able to stay away, no, man. No, man, China and Pakistan going to operate together. So India going to be attacked, and India will obviously have have no option but to retaliate. It's gonna be fucking nuclear mayhem, right? That might take out her whole civilization, by the way. But Western ruling class might don't think that far. Maybe they will think, if war is there mainly in the global south, then they will do just fine in Europe or North America. That might be in their calculus, you know. Meanwhile, interesting news that I think worth attention, that Madagascar wants to join BRICS. Recently, there was a coup d'etat, isn't it? Military coup d'etat in Madagascar. According to reports, French-controlled regime was neutralized. French-controlled so-called leader fled the country for France, if I remember correctly. Militaries take over, and they want now, leader of militaries there, Colonel Michael Randrier Nirina, calls Madagascar to join BRICS, following other African states and establishing relations with Russia. Okay. To join BRICS, I think that's just too early. I was never in favor of bringing in as many countries as possible, because that was a clearly a rash decision, right? I think first this major or leading members, not leading, we all are equal, right? But initial creators of the BRICS first should come up with some alternative financial and banking system, alternative institutions that are necessary for emerging multipolar world, and then after creating certain steps, right, for countries that want to join, then this process of enlargement of BRICS should happen. But at least recently BRICS actually implemented these changes that now you cannot join BRICS straight away. You have to become a partner first. Okay, that's good. Madagascar may become a partner. And sometime in the future join the BRICS. Why not? Really, but not now, man. Not now. We have enough problems in BRICS already. So yeah, that's about it. Difference for a new segment of this program. Now, I guess there was no. Was there any super chat or anything that I have to highlight? Oh, nothing. So, okay, dear friends, there was in the beginning of the live stream, I mentioned that there was a $8 donation from Julie. Thank you very much again, Julie, for $8 donation through PayPal. And there was no comments, nothing from Boosty or the Rumble Super Chat. So therefore, I will just quickly go through chat, by the way. And this indicates to me, by the way, that, new segment is enough. Community chat part is not necessary, right? Because otherwise community will indicate to me with support that, let's do community chat too now. So because of that, I will just maybe go through chat a little bit. A couple of questions, right? And that's going to be it. And in the future, maybe I will no longer make videos on Sunday, because yesterday I had a day off, right? And it was great, by the way. One day to stay away from news was absolutely wonderful. I was unable to stay away from the news, like completely, because it's just not possible. I have to always prepare next program, right? So I have to always monitor their media outlets. But nevertheless, it was much less stressful than work days are. And because these Sunday chats, Sunday live streams are, at least last couple of weeks, by the way, total freaking disaster. I assume it's absolutely not necessary to maintain live streams on Sundays. So maybe this is going to be my live stream on Sunday. So, and I will have Saturday, Sunday day offs. Like, that will be good, man. Monday to Friday, work days, live streams, updates, first updates on YouTube and Rumble, second updates on Patreon and Boosty, right? Sometimes I'm quite active on my Telegram channel, Twitter X, sometimes not. But Saturday, Sunday should be like day offs, man, right? There is no need to overload really myself. And so I see comment from Nikos. I will start from the beginning, dear friends. I will just scroll faster. Like let's take 15 minutes, sir. I'm sorry for being a little harsh yesterday. Levander, Nikos is commenting. True, I do express dissatisfaction with some of your aggressive views. I do understand them and sympathize with you. And there's a second part. I try to find a middle ground as the ship situation has affected Greece, Russia, and China. But I was depressed yesterday because I was a recruitment. I saw recruitment ads here in Greece. They want to send me to war. Did you join the military, Nikos? You were planning to join military. If you have joined the military, then yeah. If they want to deploy Greek military, I don't know where are they gonna send you to fight Russia or what? But in any case, I hope Greek military will not send its troops to fight nowhere. But when it comes to first part, Nikos, it's all fine. I see some comments, sir. I've been sent some comments, sir, of support by members of community. Because quite often, every now and then, I'm criticized big time, by the way, for views that I have about different topics, and I think it's okay. I mean, I'm not, I'm not a snowflake, right? I can take some punches, so it's all good, man. You can criticize me as much as you find it necessary. Sometimes my take might be correct. Sometimes your take might be correct. Or nobody's perfect, isn't it? So don't worry about it. Or feel free to criticize me anytime you want, as long as this criticism is coming from good place. It's absolutely fine, by the way. And so don't worry about it. When it comes to my takes, like aggressive takes, I would not call it aggressive necessarily. You can call it that because you are from your country is member of anti-Russian coalition, right? And obviously, I can understand that you don't want Russia to retaliate either on your coalition, right? Your country is anti-Russian, part of anti-Russian coalition. You want the Western world to be safe, right? Not to experience any retaliation whatsoever. I mean, from your standpoint, that's understandable. You want Russia to exercise restraint further. I can understand if British people will be on the same page as you are, right? They don't want Russia to strike back on UK and strike back hard because they don't want it. Why would they want that, isn't it? Even if they understand that London is committing acts of war against Russia, literally day in, day out, ordinary Brits would love to see this restraint policy from Russia to continue forever, right? Even if they understand, right, deep within that Moscow has every right to retaliate, and if there was any other, if there was US, right, there, in Russia's place, US will long time ago obliterate UK, literally turn it to radioactive island, right? So I can understand why citizens from Western countries would love to see this constant restraint from Russian side, because they want to avoid any consequences for their criminal activity of their governments, for hostility of their governments. So I can understand why you don't like when I say we have to retaliate. I can understand why you don't like when I say only language Western ruling class understands is force, right? And until we will use this force, they're not going to stop. But even if you don't like this, what I'm saying is true, isn't it? It's just true. It's factually accurate statement, what I'm saying. Longer we continue these restraint policies, by the way, more and more acts of war, more and more provocations, more and more harm we're going to face. That's how it is, man. I mean, it's not a matter of opinion. It's just factual, right? We are observing this for past 4 years now, and even longer than that, actually, right? Because I think this hostility against Russia, this proxy war against Russia, Western ruling class launched in 2008, actually, when they ordered their proxy regime in Georgia to attack Russian militaries, Russian peacekeepers in South Ossetia, right? So it's a we should always, as I said, I mean, we should zoom out a bit, right, and try to see bigger picture. And maybe in that case, based on our level of our knowledge, information, experience, we will have a better opportunity to see bigger picture, to understand better. But nevertheless, I understand why you or any other Westerner, let's say, will be not happy with my takes that we have to retaliate. But because, yet again, you don't want your countries to pay price for the crimes that your countries committed. But I mean, this is not necessarily the way that the rest of the world sees the situation, right? Isn't it? I mean, I can understand why Westerners feel like they are exceptional, they can commit crimes with impunity, and no one ever should retaliate. But rest of the world not necessarily see things the same way, right? So feel free. I mean, if you will continue to join live streams, feel free to criticize me. I'm always open for criticism, by the way, and I think I myself is quite self-critical. So, I can take those punches. Don't worry about it. Thank you very much for sharing opinion, Nikos. Also, I can see a question from a bald eagle. What happened to Lindsey Graham? He went quieter. Well, remember, Eagle, about a week ago, Graham was almost crying while talking to a journalist once when U.S. strikes on Iran did not happen, despite early predictions that strike is imminent. And maybe he was told to just keep quieter a bit, right? Because yet again, as I said, by the way, Western ruling class policy of the Western ruling class in regards to Middle East, in regards to Iran, for example, is not about any values that they pretend to have, these Western elites. It's about destabilizing whole region, right? And all these rhetorics from Lindsey Graham that regime change going to be great for democracy and this and that, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It might not be helpful right now. He was, he's on the pause, and once he will receive new instructions, how to behave, what the new talking points are, well, he will be allowed back, I guess, into media field. Or maybe he's just sick. We don't know. But for a couple of days, I really did not see Lindsey Graham making headlines. So I don't know. Maybe he is just on a vacation or something. State that voted for Graham or Graham, how you say it in English, should be shamed of itself. How, man? How anybody can go to polling station and freaking cast their ballot for someone like Graham and Lindsey Graham? What's going on in the heads of those people, man? I don't know. I don't know. I'm scrolling now fast, dear friends. If I spot any capital Q, I will react on it. If not, I guess that's about it for today's live stream. I hope you find new segment informative, by the way. And my apologies if I missed your question. I think this is the last community chat, by the way, on my channels. We had a good run. We had a good run with these community chats, but last several live streams clearly are indicating that it's useless to continue these live streams on Sundays. So better to take oh, interesting. Danny Duval is commenting, Luan, I bet you $100. There will be third term. Putin taught him that lesson. You know, if Trump physically manages to, yeah, I mean, pull that off, if he's physically like fit enough, he's already experiencing some issues. I guess, it's just sometimes he's just going wild, right? So there is clearly some intellectual decline that is happening. He was never too bright, really, or very bright, but something is happening with him, right? Age, by the way, age does its thing, man. It's natural. It's nothing extraordinary, really. When I will be 80 years old, of course, my memory, my mental capabilities, intellectual capabilities, not going to be the same as when I was in best of my years, right? So it's nothing extraordinary. It's just how our bodies work, right? So he's on a decline, significant decline already, I think. So will he be able to do next term physically? I don't know. Maybe their plan is to go on or come up with some explanation why he can run again, right? Maybe they will run with Trump and then he will resign and Vance will continue or something. I don't know, but anything is possible, man. Anything is possible. I never believed there is any democracy in US. I mean, whoever believed that there is any democracy either in US or in Europe, by the way, they might have some hard time to understand what the hell is going on. But me personally, not surprised, not going to be surprised by anything. If it comes to democracy, by the way, I mean, even though political system here is in Russia is not perfect, far to be perfect, by the way. I think people here in Russia have more say in the politics on the local and federal levels than Americans. I truly believe in that, man. Although there is no such a thing as a pure democracy anywhere in this world, right? I don't think it's even possible. Elites will always try to maintain some ways of control, right? To stay in power, man. That's human mentality is corrupt, right? Humans are corrupt creatures. Maybe not all. There are some angel-like people somewhere, but mostly humans are fraudulent and they're not as strong, including mentally, as we would like. So once good people, by the way, even good people, very good people, once they somehow will get to position of power, I guess something is happening with them, right? And they become adapted to this power, and one way or another, but they are then creating some infrastructure that will keep them in power as much as possible, right? And this is the case in terms of elites just everywhere in this world, everywhere. There is no country where elites are not operating in this way, right? And after all, there is a say, isn't it? Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And there is something in this say, man. So I was never in a position of power. I'm never gonna be in a position of power. I don't care about it. I don't want it, right? Uh, so I find it difficult to understand what is happening with their brains, right? With their psyche once people are in a position of power. But they are getting corrupted, man. Oh, there was a boosty. Oh, there was a boosty. There was a boosty, by the way. Comment from a boosty and a donation. Let me highlight this, if I may. And thank you for interesting comment, Danny. And image files. That's from Boosty. Thank you very much, Alexander G, for your $10 donation on our 723 ruble donation on Boosty. And a comment from Alexander is, thanks, Levan. You are the only one to give updates on Ukraine attacks against Russia areas on YouTube. Most people have no idea. Russian apartment complexes get hit every week. Almost every day, unfortunately, but for sure every week this is happening. And unfortunately, Western media is hesitant to share information about it. Just day before yesterday, that was when Adigea region was targeted, isn't it? And I shared video during the live stream. I mean, area looked like something from the hell. I mean, everything is burning, buildings burning, cars burning. It's a hell. And I'm quite sure none of the Western media outlets shared the information about that strike, isn't it? When dozens of people end up being injured, dozens of houses were damaged and destroyed. Thank you very much, Alexander, for your support, donation, and commentary. Thank you. And also, I see a question. Bald Eagle is commenting. I'd like everyone to think 5 years from now. How do you think this will all end? 5 years from now, I think based on insanity of the Western ruling class, I think 5 years from now we might be engaged in a direct war with the European countries. Maybe. If globalists will not go ahead with provoking direct clashes between NATO, European NATO members and Russia, then this conflict will last maybe another 2 years, and after that, it's hard to say, man. I mean, it is difficult to calculate what Western ruling class is gonna do. They are just too crazy, And that's why I'm unfortunately I'm quite sure that there is a high risk that before end of this year they will provoke direct clashes between some NATO member states and Russia. they clearly are moving in that direction, isn't it? And how, what will happen after that is it's anybody's guess. Hard to say, really, right? And if Russia will not use extreme force to deter Western ruling class from provoking direct hostilities between European states and Russia, then I mean, I don't know, man. I just don't know. 5 years from now, I think I don't know. I can come up with many ideas, but I just don't know because normal. I think I'm more or less normal, right? Nobody's perfect, but I think I'm normal guy, and my brains are not working in a way brains of those psychos are working that are in charge of the Western world. So only randomly I might be able, while going through certain scenarios, only randomly I might come up with one that they will actually implement, right? Western elites. Otherwise, normal people cannot be sure what our Western ruling class is going to do next because, yet again, they are insane. And I mean, even psychiatrists have no freaking idea what insane people gonna do, man. So how we should understand. So I don't know, man. I don't know. I would love to see peace this year already, actual peace. No Minsk 3, Minsk 4, Minsk 5 stuff. That is just a temporary solution and guaranteed trouble. But I want actual, sustainable, long-term peace, right, to be reached as soon as possible, hopefully this year. But unfortunately, I'm not that optimistic on that. So that's a question that if you try to answer seriously, then you will struggle to come up with a good answer, I think, because anything might happen, man. Based on insanity of the Western ruling class, literally anything might happen. They might provoke even full-scale nuclear war. And maybe it is good, that some people in this world, many people in this world, don't really pay attention to all this stuff because they sleep. Good, man, because they have no worry. They're not realizing that any day, literally any day, might be the last day for humanity. So, maybe they are blessed for being ignorant in some ways about what is going on in this world. But yes, unfortunately, and it's not just me, by the way. Leading scientists worldwide are stating that the world has never been closer to extinction level event than we are right now, and that's why doomsday clock, so called, is like almost at midnight now, almost. And midnight itself is extinction level event. So I don't know, Bald Eagle. I would love to see peace, man. Actual true peace, but and I'm not gonna pretend I have a good answer. I cannot see future. I might have some ideas, but Scooby is commenting, Levon got it wrong about China making a deal over Venezuela. 40% of debt owed to them from Latin America gone now. Maybe I was wronger and China was not involved in that trade-off that happened. But I mean, first of all, 40% of debt of whom? Venezuela? I mean, for China, it's like pennies, right? We are talking about China, by the way. They have, so much money that they don't really know what to do with it. So money is not the issue for China for decades now, really. I think yet again, I think it was very strange. The Chinese delegation was meeting with Maduro hours before this operation happened, right? And with kidnapping of Maduro and stuff. And if you paid attention, Scooby, Trump said that they deployed some freaking weapon, isn't it, to conduct this operation. Um, what they call discombobulator or something, right? And he's not allowed to talk about it. You see, even probably he was told to say this kind of crap, right? Because through their media outlets, through their so-called alternative media platforms, they are pushing this nonsense that U.S. deployed some super know-how weapon that immobilize Venezuelan militaries, and that's why there was no resistance, right? While in reality, just one simple question debunks all these claims, right? I mean, how come that this weapon only work on militaries then, and not on the civilians? How come that entire population of Caracas did not went crazy, right? Because of deployment of some weapons that make militaries lose consciousness, lose orientation, and this and that. And how come that no one else did, man? So you see, it's all false narratives because Washington wants to push this false idea that there was no trade-off between government of Venezuela and U.S. Potentially with involvement of China, maybe even with involvement of Moscow in some level. But I mean, I'm convinced there was trade-off, man. You cannot pull off such an operation without some agreements on the ground, right? You just cannot do this kind of stuff without local governments and potentially some other players being involved. So sometime in the future, we will learn, of course, what had happened. If there was a trade-off between China and Washington, that was a mistake on part of China, because if they think US will honor any agreement, well, they are wrong. US will not honor nothing, right? But on the other hand, maybe China agree on such stuff because they were physically, technically unable to maintain their positions in Venezuela anyways. China is objectively not in a position to challenge US in Latin America. This is just objectively correct information, isn't it? Yes, they are powerful enough, but first and foremost, they are focused on their own safety and security, on their own region, right? And they are not as strongly presented elsewhere. And they definitely are in no position to challenge US in the Western Hemisphere. And I don't think they really want to do so, at least for now. So, yet again, I think there was a trade-off. And whatever China gonna lose on Venezuela, it's, if they were unable to secure Venezuela, then it's a argument that don't really makes much different for Beijing. If they cannot stay there anyways, then better to make some deal, right? And at least gain some time, right? Time is precious too. So I think there was a trade-off, but and I think not just China, but yet again, Maduro, his government officials were involved. American delegations are moving in and out of Caracas now like it's their backyard, really. I mean, CIA director just recently went in, right, and bring some new orders, I guess, or something. So I think it was a trade-off, but I might be wrong. Yet again, I mean, nobody's perfect, and I'm more than welcome criticism of any of my takes, right? Because my judgment is based on my knowledge my education, my experience, and you might have more education, better knowledge, better experience, or wider experience. Your opinion might be just more correct than mine. And if you share your opinion, I will listen to it, and I'm well capable of making correcting my own takes whenever I see that, you know what, I mean, you actually have better arguments, man. So, and again, maybe I was wrong, man. Maybe there was no trade-off at all. And Americans just went in, and they were extremely lucky that almost nobody fired at them, right? But I'm gonna stay on my opinion that it was a trade-off. And yeah, friends, I guess this is it for now. Um, okay, by the way, uh, probably I missed some questions or the comments, but well, this is it for now. 2 hours live stream, so hopefully you liked it. And yeah, this is it. Have a wonderful day. Thank you very much for your attention, and take care. See you tomorrow.